I met Chris in Worcester, and he worked with the Catholic Worker in Worcester. And I had spent some time with the Catholic Workers in Washington and New York. And so when we decided to get married, we talked about starting a Catholic Worker house.
And we thought about Hartford because that's where her family is from. And we were going to Mass at St. Michael's across the street. And we hadn't shared our prayers with anybody, friends or family or nobody. And one day, Brian came up to us during the Kiss of Peace and said, "So when are you guys going to start a Catholic Worker house here in Hartford?"
I was just going to say, "Hey, how you guys doing?" I'm Brian Kavanaugh. And as God is my witness, the words that came out of my mouth were, "Hey, how are you doing? When are you guys going to start a Catholic Worker?" And I kind of, jumped at that because what the heck did that come from? And they kind of looked at me startled. And they said, "Well, we've been thinking about it, but we haven't told anybody about it. And would you be interested?" And I said, and the little bit I knew about the Catholic Worker was probably not want to live in one because it's hectic and crazy, but I'd be willing to support you any way I can. And so it moved on, the whole process moved on from there.
Gave notice at a job I had in Worcester working with mentally ill homeless folks, and we moved in with Jackie's mom, found out we were pregnant, sent a postcard out to about a dozen people, and began a process of meeting and praying once or twice a week for about a year.
And everyone was going to live here and do the work together except for Brian. He said he was a contemplative and he was going to help out once in a while. And at the end of the year, the only person willing to move in was Brian Kavanaugh. So that's how the three of us started.
Once we decided to become an intentional community, we needed a place to work from. And so we used St. Michael's Church as the bullseye, so to speak, of where we wanted to be.
And the first house we looked at was the house that became St. Martin House, known as the Purple House to the kids in the neighborhood. And the bank wanted $110,000 for that, and we had a couple of $100. So we wrote a letter to the bank asking if they would be interested in doing something creative with us, if we could find 100 people to sign mortgages for $1,000. And the bank never wrote back to us, never acknowledged our letter.
And then this house got sold at auction for $60,000 to someone else. So we stopped looking and praying about this house, and we went and found a house about half a mile away.
The only thing with that was that I think 2 of the bottom floors were inhabited by people. And I didn't like the idea of telling people they'd have to leave because we needed it for our ministry. It just didn't seem like a good thing to start by telling people they would have to leave, But it didn't seem like there was any other option if we wanted to get this to the next stage.
During that process, we got a call from Society for Savings, the bank that owned the Purple House. And a year had gone by since we had sent them that letter, and they asked us if we were still interested in the house. We said, "Well, of course, but you auctioned it off." And they said, "Well, the auction fell through. And not only that, we're going out of business and we're all losing our jobs. So we want to do a good deed before we lose our jobs." And we said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, make us an offer, any offer." And we said, "All right, well, $20,000. We'll put 10 down and you can finance 10. And it was one of the vice presidents of the bank. He said he'd get back to us. A couple of weeks go by and he didn't get back to us. And the woman who wanted to sell us her home was getting antsy for us to apply formally for the mortgage. So Jackie and I go, we apply for the mortgage, $500 non-refundable dollars to apply for the mortgage.
He was almost like distraught. This wasn't, he didn't feel this is really the way we should be proceeding, but there didn't seem to be any other option. And as I hear it, he and Jackie went back to her mom's house. And as they're coming up the stairs, Jackie's mom said, "There's a phone call for you."
And the phone is ringing, literally ringing as we walk through the door. And Jackie answers it, and she gets all white and hands me the phone. And it's Society for Savings.
And they ended up giving it to us for $10,000, which was a pretty big miracle. I think it's one of Dorothy Day's miracles. So that's how we got this house. And then we spent probably the next 6 months fixing it up because it was in pretty bad shape. It had been abandoned for a few years.
Every window was broken. Every door was broken. The floors were covered with a couple of layers of tiles, a couple of layers of carpets that various wild animals had been doing their business on. There were rats and there were mice and there were bats and it was gross. And all my tools were stolen. They stole the toilet paper and the light bulbs. They stole everything. And so The Hartford Current ran a story, and the community replaced my tools. The Greater Hartford community, very grateful for that. An anonymous woman met me at a tool shop with $500 to buy tools, and but at that point we started taking turns sleeping here, so that we wouldn't lose our stuff again.
And it was my turn one night, and I can remember laying on the floor, and I had cold air blowing on my neck, and I thought, geez, the rats are going to come out and nibble on my ears, But I'm laying there, and I just started laughing because I had the most overwhelming feeling that that was exactly where I should be and what I should be doing. And I thought, after 50 years of being like a rat in a maze, somehow, some way, I found the place where God wants me to be, doing what God wants me to do. Never in a million years would have thought that, or could have found it on my own. The Catholic worker vision in general is you do the works of mercy, which are feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, housing the homeless. So we thought we'd be basically doing something like that.
We anticipated that we'd be housing folks. It turns out that we've always had people living with us, but that's never been the more significant of our ministries.
Chris and I would go out and pick up food from nearby sources, go up to the local projects, and distribute it from the back of the pickup trucks.
We had received a lot of furniture donations to fill up the first house, and people kept giving us stuff. So we began sharing it with people, and we got a spare room across the street, and we would spend one day a week picking up furniture and another day of the week distributing it to people in the neighborhood.
But while we were gone and Jackie was here alone with Micah, their oldest son, more and more people started coming to the door looking for help.
Kids started gravitating here. We had a dog, we had little kids ourselves, so pretty soon we realized that this was one of the biggest needs in the neighborhood.
The agenda was, in a sense, put forth by the community, and the other work sort of diminished in how much time we spend on it as the children began to occupy more time and more space in our hearts.
Sharing my parents was rough. I remember once I came home and there were kids in my room playing with my Legos. It was just an explicit memory. I was like, those are my Legos.
Everyone who came around my house, I assumed they were my friend, and so I didn't really have that much of an understanding of it. But then when I did get older and I realized, wow, everyone's always here, things like privacy and, sharing all my stuff kind of became a little bit more frustrating. I had more questions.
But in terms of sharing them, they were also really good about making sure that there were some lines between my family and the ministry, and I've never had to seriously worry about that.
The greenhouse was a vision of Jackie and Chris's.
We decided that we wanted to make a big part of our ministry be the tutoring after-school program and the Saturday art and sport program.
They saw the potential, that the upstairs could be very good for arts and crafts. There was a lot more space for a food pantry, and the backyard was superb for like a playground and basketball court. And there was a parishioner at St. Michael's that lived in that house, and she had paid somebody to do a lot of work on the house, and they had taken the money and they had not done the work, and so she was stuck with this place falling apart, couldn't pay the bills.
She had lost both her legs to diabetes, or she was swindled, and the amount of money that we bought it for was able to replace that money, and she was able to live off the rest of her life.
Getting the greenhouse was a really big shift. The most explicit thing I remember is definitely coming home from school one day and not having everyone in my house, and it almost felt a little empty at first, but then I ran upstairs and there's no one playing with my Legos, so that was really exciting.
Before we had the greenhouse, absolutely everything we did would be out of the Purple House. It would be Saturday morning, it would be after school, it would be when people came to tutor the older kids, it would be right at my dining room table. It would be every day, the phone would be off the hook. Day and night, people would come to the door. There'd never be a free bed. There would always be someone sleeping there.
Having the space at the greenhouse allowed us to open it up to other folks to help come, like the Husky Sport Program. And so people from Yukon started coming and building relationships and mentoring with the kids. And then we started having kids from Northwest and East Catholic and Trinity and Central come. And in a way, it's enabled us to break down a lot more barriers.
People show up with lots of preconceived ideas on both sides about what might be going on here, or what the kids are like, or what the volunteers are going to be like. And then to see all that all those barriers sort of break down as the Saturdays go on, that's kind of neat to see.
Helping people after school, doing art together, learning about sports, learning about healthy cooking and eating. The sort of top layer on the cake is just this spiritual community building, that we're all part of one community. We all have to figure out how to live in the world together. And really, it starts with little tiny kids. It used to be back in the day that when kids got to be 12 or 13, it wasn't cool to be at the greenhouse, and then we would lose them to the street. And a lot of times that meant they would join a gang or they would drop out of school.
7 years ago now, maybe it's 8 years, 2 of our kids were murdered, and it was awful. One was 14 and one was 17, and we had stopped really working with them because they moved on, and we thought that was just the natural thing for them to do, to move on when they got to be 13 or 14. And there were plenty of 6-year-olds that wanted to come in, and it just made sense. And then they were killed, and we realized we made a dreadful mistake, and we needed to find ways to keep them involved and keep them interested.
And one of the first things we did was we put in as full as we could, a full-size basketball court, because the kids love to play ball, and that was a great way to keep the older kids. And then we kind of extended the time, and we made this time and space for them to come and have a safe place to come and play basketball. And we also started thinking about hiring kids to be counselors at camp. We just took the kids that were already coming and gave them some responsibility and leadership and a little bit of money, and then that opened up this whole great mentoring thing that started happening. So in the attempts to get kids to come to stick around as they got older, it eventually started meaning they would stay through high school, and then we would try to help them to get into college.
And that's really blossomed alongside a burgeoning relationship with the Husky Sport Program of Yukon, which was begun by Dr. Jenny Bruning. She wanted to get involved, and we did some brainstorming about getting some of the student athletes at Yukon to come and work with the kids here. And it's really blossomed over the last several years into a wonderful program of mentoring and working with the kids on nutrition and homework skills, and getting them out to the campus to see college and to meet college students. A lot of the student athletes are people of color, and so to have our young people see black and brown people that are in college has been a wonderful, eye-opening experience for those kids.
Try when you're swimming, right? Try moving your head to the side so you can take breaths.
We have the summer camp where we take the kids to Allen-Doucot for fishing and swimming and art and conflict resolution skills and things like that.
What happened was, a place that I had lived in down in Voluntown in the late 80s, the building was not being used. So we wrote to the guy that owned the property and we said, so we're Catholic workers and we would love to do a summer camp and use the building there, and we would try to scrape some money together to rent the place from you. And the man wrote back to us and told us he had been a Catholic worker in New York when he was younger, and he would love to have us come. So then we started doing summer camp Ahimsa, and that was a whole nother layer and level to what we were already doing. It gave us a lot more time with the kids, and it opened up a world for them that they really had never had access to. That also gave us a lot more time to do Alternatives with Violence program. And now, after all these years of doing camp and doing conflict resolution skills, we hardly have any issues. Last couple of years, everyone's made it through the whole week.
There's rhythms to the seasons of the greenhouse, where we try to do different things throughout the course of the year.
We've tried to do a lot of the anti-war marches and done actions at the White House and places like that.
Brian will vigil every Friday at the Federal Building, reminding people of the folks that are held hostage in Guantanamo, or the wars that we're fighting and the people that are dying from our drones. We spend Good Friday praying at contemporary Stations of the Cross outside the subbase in Groton, remembering all of the ways in which Christ is crucified today with violence and war and poverty.
We want to honor our graduates tonight.
We have the graduation party where we hold up the young people that are finishing school as role models for the younger people to stay in school and to celebrate that wonderful achievement.
We get backpacks and gift certificates, and We make sure that the kids have the support and the help they need to get registered for college and figure out where they're going to high school. And all the volunteers come, and everyone brings great food, and we have a jump house, and it's a pretty crazy night.
Of course, we have our Christmas party where we bring a busload of the children from the neighborhood down to Voluntown where we run the summer camp.
And we set up our big rec hall to be a winter wonderland, and we have lots of great crafts and snacks and hot chocolate, and we have amazing elves that put together lots of toys they've collected from different churches, and we have a really nice Christmas celebration. Part of the Catholic worker spirituality is a commitment to nonviolence. And so for us, that not only means being a nonviolent presence in the neighborhood, but it means witnessing to nonviolence wherever we feel called to do that.
What we're trying to do is build a beloved community, or to at least participate in the unfolding of the beloved community. And the beloved community is not an American community. It's the human community.
When you're trying to build community, you're sort of opening your family up to be bigger and bigger. And so sometimes for the kids from here, learning about the rest of their family means teaching them about places like Iraq or Haiti or Guatemala.
Growing up in the North End, I thought this was what being poor was, and only this was what being poor was. But when I was 12 years old, I did have a chance to go to Sudan, and we saw extreme poverty, people that didn't eat for days, and people that had to walk 10 miles for water that wasn't even clean. And that really started to open up my perspective of the world, especially of what poverty in our world was.
It's really easy to sit back and give things blanket definitions, and part of bearing witness is saying, no, it's more in depth than that.
The weapons and the bombs that we make in this country are being exported and used by other people, and they're having consequences on people. And the only way that we in the United States can accept that is if we don't know about those people.
All I needed was someone to get our aid packages to Iraq. And I knew just the guy.
Can you get this in there?
Well, it's very illegal, but I can bring it in.
Okay, you'll bring it in? How do you do this? How do you do it if it's not right?
No, I didn't say it wasn't right. I said it wasn't legal. Our government tells us...
I want to know the people my government says are my enemy, and see for myself if they're my enemy.
We've had great experiences at having kids from other countries come and be here. Marwa, a Palestinian girl, came with her mom. She was able to have a bullet removed from her skull at Hartford Children's Hospital, and she lived here and was community with the kids from here. We had Mustafa here from Iraq that was having some shrapnel removed, and that was a pretty amazing experience for the kids from here to get to see a kid from Iraq that they were told was their enemy be this beautiful child that they loved that was just like them.
He and his mother were here. I knew that they weren't from Hartford, but I wasn't sure exactly where they were from. He was one of the kids playing all morning, and at one point his mom was going to take him away because they had some errands to run, and he was crying like any kid would cry because he really wanted to stay and play with the kids here. So she ended up letting him stay. She went away to do the errands, and we do a circle just before lunchtime every Saturday. And at the circle, he was standing next to me, and I went to hold his hand for the circle, and his hand was missing. And so then I learned that his hand was blown off while he was in his bedroom at night by a weapon that was made here in the United States. And if we even met these people and spent a little bit of time and closed the gap between the United States and all of our perceived enemies, if we could close those gaps and get people in the same room, there's no difference between them. But if we separate and move apart, then all of these other things come on. We're only allowing people to kill people in our name because we don't see the results of it. Nobody ever sees it. You don't have to hold the hand of a kid who had his hand blown off and understand that he's the same child as the child that you have.
Jesus didn't say you have to like your enemies, but he says you have to love them. And love is not some romantic notion, Dorothy reminds us. Love is hard work. Love is feeding people when they're hungry. It's forgiving people when they've wronged you. It's being patient with people when they really get under your skin. It's housing people when they're homeless. You know, war is just the opposite of all of those things. War destroys home, it burns crops, it poisons water, it denies health care, it doesn't bury the dead, it leaves the dead exposed on the battlefield. You know, I don't know, we're trying to do the other thing.
This one's a lot closer than the real one was, but it again is not centered.
The greenhouse thrives, survives, exists through the generosity of other people's time, talent, and treasure. We don't make it happen. The community makes it happen.
We've had people over the years say, oh, you people, you live there, I wish I could do that. And we say, no, you're important where you are. You're in the suburbs, which is very difficult because a lot of people don't have the same grasp of what's going on. And you're like, voice in the wilderness.
Some people can just send us a check, but that's huge because we can't pay the bills without a check. Some people come into tutoring and help one kid for months and months and months just to figure out how to multiply or divide. Some people can't stand dealing with the kids, but they can make wonderful food, so they'll drop off food. Some people can just come and be present. They can just be there and listen to someone. It takes all kinds of people to do what we do. So I would hope that people wouldn't let their fears or what they feel like their shortcomings are keep them away from realizing that they're part of building the beloved kingdom.
You just knew instinctively, this is the potential. You can have this, it's here already. And you see it in rare glimpses here and now. This is what we're all working for.
So many people are starving for love and are looking for love, and love is what the greenhouse is about, and hopefully you can bring some, hopefully you can come and get some, and that just seems to be how it works out the best.
The mystery of the kingdom of God is that it's at the same time already and not yet. It's not yet when we segregate ourselves by race and class. It's not yet when we hoard instead of share. It's not yet when we use violence instead of nonviolence. It's not yet when we compete rather than cooperate. We're trying to help the alreadiness of the kingdom unfold a bit more in our midst. We're trying to facilitate the beloved community.